If you're a long-time viewer of the channel, you're undoubtedly familiar with our opinion on big powers like the Republic, the Empire, and the various mega-corporations exploiting distant worlds for their resources. Deplorable as it was the reality in the galaxy, and the powers that be justified it by the necessity of these resources. You see, in a galaxy so vast, the sheer number of precious ores and minerals that could be put to specific use was unending. What really pulled the yoke of the capitalist plow was just how much of a difference some of these resources made, which made them more valuable than almost anything we have on Earth today. In today's video, we'll be looking at some of the most valuable ores and minerals in the Star Wars universe, with the uncontested king of them all at the very end.
Attention, Sergeant on deck!
Unlike what we usually do, we're starting off this list with an anti-entry: Kyber Crystals. You'd think that with how they were used to power lightsabers and the Death Star's laser, they'd be insanely valuable. And technically, you'd be correct. Kyber crystals were an incredible source of power for various forms of weaponry, and in the later years of galactic history, they were worth a fair credit. However, we're discrediting them as an entry because, for the vast majority of the galaxy's history, they weren't on the market. You see, the Jedi controlled their supply and policed it with draconian severity, to the extent that pretty much no one tried to buy or sell Kyber crystals. It was considered a certain failure, which meant no unregulated supply and thus no demand. They were undoubtedly valuable, but because we're talking market values here, we'll not be counting this obvious pick for the purposes of this video. With how popular the Mandalorian is, we're pretty sure at least half of you immediately thought of Beskar, and for good reason. Also known as Mandalorian iron or steel, pure Beskar was one of the toughest substances in the galaxy. Mined exclusively on the planet Mandalore and its moon, Concordia, Beskar was commonly mixed with other metals to craft Mandalorian armor. Armor containing Beskar could withstand blaster bolts and allow the wearer to shrug them off for a time. Compare that to the one-and-done clone and stormtrooper armors, and you're already more protected than 99% of the galaxy. If that wasn't enough, however, pure Beskar was strong enough to repel lightsaber strikes. In Season 1 of The Mandalorian, Ahsoka Tano faces off against Magistrate Morgan Elsbeth, who wields a spear of pure Beskar. The spear doesn't buckle for a second under the assault of her twin lightsabers, which is more than any non-ionized weapon can say. If the ultimate defense wasn't enough, Beskar could also be used offensively. During the Galactic Civil War, Sabine Wren engineered a weapon called the Arc Pulse Generator that superheated Beskar to the point it would cause a reaction and burn anything containing Beskar in the vicinity to a crisp. Thanks to its incredible durability and defensive properties, as well as its existence on only 2 mostly ruined worlds, Beskar was undoubtedly rare and valuable. However, the Mandalorians were the only ones who really knew how to process it correctly, which brought its usability down significantly. We don't have a concrete answer in-universe, but fans have estimated that 1 gram of Beskar was worth about 20,000 credits, which is more than many ships cost. Moving on to something more relatable than super metals, another incredibly valuable substance in Star Wars was spice, and not in a good way. Much like in our world, illicit substances can get expensive fast, and the good stuff goes for way more than the average person would expect. Spice in general was a category of drug, with many different substances that fell under the umbrella term. Some were terrible, some were great, but the best of the best came from the planet Kessel. The variant mined there was called glitter stim, and it was made from the webs of spice spiders. The spiders relied on the substance mentally altering any prey that landed in its web, and spice refiners sought a similar effect for their customers. It's unclear exactly what effects it had, but the best description we have describes a brief telepathic burst of pleasure, followed by a heightened mental state. It was also, as you might imagine, incredibly addictive. The mining process was also difficult. unrefined spice had to be kept in total darkness, or else it would lose potency. Combine that with the fact that the spice spiders would suck any spice miner dry of their life energy if they crossed the creature, and you can imagine how difficult a process it was. Its addictive nature, difficult source and mining process, combined with its incredibly strong effects, made glitterstim the most sought-after spice in the galaxy. We don't have perfect numbers, but an estimate puts 1 kilo of glitterstim at 40,000 credits, which is 2 to 4 times more expensive than what a kilo of cocaine would retail for the US in 2019, or at least that's what internet sources tell us. Unfortunately, spice felt good. Too good. Just a taste was enough to get you hooked, which meant demand only kept growing. That's why one of the most illegal substances was also one of the most valuable ones, in monetary value, if not contribution to society. Drugs and warfare weren't the only thing people cared about in the Star Wars universe, of course. Both typically led to a lot of sick people, and some of those were rich enough to afford the best healthcare. Earlier in galactic history, Kolto filled the role of the magical healing gel, but when Bacta was created, it blew Kolto's effects out of the water. Bacta, as you all know, was a blue gelatinous liquid created by the Vratics. It wasn't found in nature as is, but was rather created by combining kava, alazi, and bori fluid and a type of barley known as Vratixia renanicus, all ingredients that were found and processed almost exclusively on Thyphera. Once the gel was created, it had miraculous healing properties. Thanks to the microbiotics found in the fluid, Bacta started acting the moment it came into contact with a wound. With it, healing that was otherwise impossible became possible. What Bacta did was promote the rapid regeneration of organic compounds. This is a fancy way of saying it regrew what was damaged, no matter the type of tissue it was. Skin, muscle, fingernails, bones could all be regenerated, and even nerve damage was reversible, which was not normally possible. This made Bacta widely applicable for every type of injury, from burns to slashes and more. Now, don't get us wrong, Bacta by itself wasn't incredibly expensive. 1 liter only cost around 100 credits, which is nothing compared to some of the other items on this list, but 1 liter wasn't enough. The way most medics used Bacta was by filling up a specialized tank, sedating the patient, fitting them with a breathing mask, and submerging them in the tank. Here's where the costs piled up. A single empty Bacta tank cost 100,000 credits, and it took 30,000 credits to fill it up. That brings the cost of a single functional Bacta tank to 130,000 credits, which was more than most people could ever afford. If you add in how much the galaxy needed it and how controlled its supply was, Bacta was definitely invaluable beyond its monetary price. But, without a doubt, the most valuable substance in the galaxy was Coaxium, at least in canon. If the name doesn't ring a bell, its more common name is hyperfuel. It was a variant of hypermatter, another important fuel that fills Coaxium's role in Legends, though ordinary hypermatter wasn't nearly as expensive. Yes, this was the substance that permitted hyperspace travel, which was the backbone for, well, everything in the galaxy. Trade, transportation, and even military operations relied on the ability to pop in and out of hyperspace and cut travel time down from decades or centuries to a matter of hours at most. Without Coaxium, none of that would be possible, and interstellar transportation would go back to the days of freezing shipmates in carbonite and sending them off into the vast emptiness of space. This alone makes the substance immeasurably valuable to the existence of galactic society as we know it. But if that weren't enough, it was also exceedingly rare, difficult to gather, and difficult to refine. Across the galaxy, Coaxium could be found in places with strong interstellar energy, like Kessel. In its raw, unrefined state, it was incredibly volatile and highly explosive. If it wasn't stored properly after being mined, it would destabilize, turn red, and then explode with particular prejudice. It had to be immediately stored in a temperature-controlled container after extraction, transported to a refinery, then carefully refined until it was stable enough to be kept at room temperature without destroying its container and everything around it. The way Coaxium was used was by taking advantage of its volatile release of energy. To reach hyperspace, a ship's hyperdrive reaction chamber was first covered in Coaxium. Then the Coaxium was energized to propel the ship into hyperspace. Coaxium was so potent that just a fraction of a gram was enough to power dozens of ships. This makes it a classic example of one of sci-fi's staple tropes, which is unobtainium, an improbably super high-density, high-energy kind of fuel that allows for space travel at speeds that are likely impractical in real life. Other notable examples of this trope include dilithium from Star Trek, tylium from Battlestar Galactica, and unobtainium from Avatar, which was cheekily named after the trope. At the time of the Galactic Civil War, 100 milligrams of refined Coaxium was worth approximately 60 million credits, which is an insane amount of money. The price tag and its crucial role in hyperspace travel puts it at the top of this list as the most valuable substance in the Star Wars universe. And there you have it, our pick of the most valuable substances in Star Wars. But what do you think? Did we put together a good selection, or is there something you think we missed? Please let us know in the comments section below. Thanks.